Everybody. I think people are still coming in, but just take a moment to see who's here, to notice all the people who are giving up their time and energy to be with us tonight. And then we'll move into sitting for 15 minutes together. If you'd like to join in your own spaces, saying with me, vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Relax. Relax, bad things are going to happen. Your tomatoes will grow a fungus, and your cat will get run over. Someone will leave the bag with the ice cream melting in the car and throw your blue cashmere sweater in the dryer. Your husband will sleep with a girl your daughter's age, her breast spilling out of her blouse. Or your wife will remember she's a lesbian and leave you for the woman next door. The other cat, the one you never really liked, will contract a disease that requires you to pry open its feverish mouth every 4 hours. Your parents will die. No matter how many vitamins you take, how much Pilates, you'll lose your keys, your hair, and your memory. If your daughter doesn't plug her heart into every live socket she passes, you'll come home to find your son has emptied the refrigerator, dragged it to the curb, and called the used appliance store for a pickup. It's drug money. There's a Buddhist story of a woman chased by a tiger. When she comes to a cliff, she sees a sturdy vine and climbs halfway down. But there's also a tiger below, and 2 mice, one black, one white, scurry out and begin to gnaw at the vine. At this point, she notices a wild strawberry growing from a crevice. She looks up, down at the mice. Then she eats the strawberry. So here's the view, the breeze, the pulse in your throat. Your wallet will be stolen. You'll get fat, slip on the bathroom tiles of a foreign hotel and crack your hip. You'll be lonely. Oh, taste how sweet and tart the red juice is, how the tiny seeds crunch between your teeth. Relax, by Ellen Bass. I was thinking tonight maybe we could crunch some tiny seeds together as all the bad things pile up around us and we can spend some time. I was talking with Josh about what could I possibly even begin to say to you in the midst of this extraordinary time that we're in. How do we even begin to keep ourselves steady and upright in the kind of tsunami of news and views and things that are occurring every single day? And as an aside, I remember reading some research that was published during the first year of COVID, that people who read dystopian fiction and or watched dystopian films fared better emotionally and mentally than those who read only happy fiction or watched romances. And so I felt finally my lifetime addiction to such things was of benefit. I don't live in a world where I don't think things can't get any worse. And Ellen Bass's poem has been a favourite of mine for a long time. It appeals to me. Relax. Bad things are going to happen. Anyway, back to my talk with Josh. I've been thinking of a lot about the Blue Cliff record, Case 55, Alive or Dead. And I was talking to Josh and thinking about how I might introduce it, and I threw in the idea that I might need to find some way of saying something, or the cat gets it. And Josh asked if I was going to explain why the cat would get it. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to talk about how we might do things or live our lives in a way that the cat won't get it. So the cat getting it refers to case number 14 in the Moomin Koan. Nansen kills the cat. So the case is, once the monks of the Western halls and the Eastern halls were arguing about a cat. Nansen strode in, holding up the cat, and said, "You monks, if you won't say a word of Zen, if you can say a word of Zen, I will spare the cat, otherwise I'll kill it. So if you can say a word of Zen, I'll spare the cat, otherwise I'm going to kill it." No one in the monks could answer. So Nansen cut the cat in two. That evening, when Joshu, his student, returned, Nansen told him of the incident. Joshu thereupon took off his sandal, put it on his head, and walked off. And Nansen shouted after him, "If you'd have been there, the cat would have been saved." It's a strange koan. The two protagonists in the koan are Nansen and Joshu, and they're two of the great masters in Zen. Nansen was the teacher of Joshu, and he in turn was a disciple of the great Basho. We don't know so much about this story, this koan. We don't know why the monks of the Western and Eastern halls were arguing. Norman Fisher said that it was traditional for there to be monks who focused on a formal sitting practice, and they would be one hall, and others whose practice was based on work, tending the building, cooking, growing things, and they would be the other hall. And of course, as we all know, as soon as we lean into or identify with one practice, we can find ways to become antagonistic to the other. We can often revel in our own self-righteousness about the rightness of what we're doing and the wrongness of what everyone else is doing. Those in the Western hall might think that formal practice is the way to peace and liberation and all for all, and those who work are far too worldly and too focused on outcomes and performance. And the workers could be caught in thinking they know more about the world. They're so much more realistic than those stuck there sitting doing nothing, pretending as if their food appears by magic. And I think we could probably all find ourselves on perfectly, apparently valid and true sides of any argument. And again, as an aside, it's an often quoted truism in couples therapy that you can either be right or be in relationship. And our need to be right often leads us to separation and to leaning into our differences and not our connections. We like being right. Norman Fisher says, where there is a difference and the underlying essence of difference, which is oneness, is not understood and appreciated, there will always be fighting. None of us is free from being blinded by our own view. So how do you handle this kind of situation? Which side are you on? Do you have to take sides? Can you take both sides? What do you do? What do we do? What do we do in this world of difference? And I think this is the question, and it couldn't be more pertinent for one that this time that we're in. What do we do when we're faced with the absolute inevitability of difference? Norman Fisher goes on to say, neither side considers its view to be merely a preference, an option amongst options. We might imagine the genesis of this argument. Norman ponders whether the West Hall wanted a mouser in the kitchen, keep it clean, keep the mice down, and the East Hall wanted to follow the precept of not killing, and didn't want the mice to die. Roshi Philip Kapleau wonders whether what might have happened was that Nansen and Joshu had gone to town, and as often happened when the Roshi's away, well, when the cat's away, the mice will play, and in walks this cat. Although the koan doesn't tell us what they were arguing about. Does a cat have Buddha nature? They were having an argument about that. We don't know. We can only imagine that he walked in and found the monks arguing and displaying no real understanding. And we can imagine, we'll never know why the monks were arguing. It's never recorded anywhere. But we can have a lot of fun imagining it, and maybe we could even have an argument about what they were arguing about. We can go down so many rabbit holes. And rigidity is appealing. We love to know what to think, what to do, what the rules are. And sometimes when I was a therapist, I used to invite clients to think of 10 reasons why someone might have done something that they'd done. And of course, the first reasons that they'd come up with would be ones that fitted in with their beliefs and expectations. They don't like me, they don't believe me, they don't take me seriously, they don't think I'm worthwhile, they think I'm like, or we all have those automatic, immediate reactions. And then what happens if you take time to think, what else might have been going on? They could be ill, they could have had no sleep, they might not even have noticed me. Maybe they even thought it was kind, they were saying something useful. And what we can get to, if we take enough space and time, is to know that we actually don't know what other people's reasons are for doing what they do. Maybe they don't actually even know the reasons for doing what they do. And perhaps we could never know why they've done it. And can we live with that? Can we live with not knowing? So to really taste this koan, we need to sit softly into not knowing. And then Nansen says to the arguing monks, if you can say a word of Zen, I'll spare the cat, and if you can't, I'll kill it. And we can perhaps imagine, that frozen moment for the monks, what could they say? Here's their, whatever relationship they're in to their teacher, beloved, famous, powerful, frightening teacher, demanding a literal life or death answer, a Zen answer, not any old answer, a Zen answer. And they can't respond. And perhaps many of us can imagine that. Imagine the turmoil. What would be Zen enough to save a life? What if they offered something and it was rubbish and inadequate, and then they'd be both a killer and an inadequate student? So, in their frozenness, they say nothing. And at this point, I have to say my fantasy is that I come in my great-grandmotherly way. I come shuffling across the hall in my little cloth slippers with a broom. And I look at Nansen and I say, oh, for God's sake, put the cat down and stop being so mean. And then we both laugh and walk on. But who knows? But here we enter some difficulty, because does Nansen kill the cat? It goes against the precept. Some people say he just pretends to. And some of us know that fairy stories involve cruelty and death, and the hero does not always live. Norman Fisher says, in Zen, a knife always suggests Manjushri's sword of wisdom that cuts through duality. Manjushri's swords opens up the emptiness and identity of life and death, good and bad. All oppositions are empty of real difference. All oppositions are empty of real difference. All elements of all oppositions depend on each other. We keep the oppositions going. That's what we do. Manjushri's sword slice through views, showing that all views are empty of reality and depend on one another, and arise from an underlying unity that is beyond all views. That's life. It's unexplainable. So Nansen uses Manjushri's sword in a little piece of street theatre designed to take the monk's dispute to another level. Never mind the cat. What's life? What's death? What are we doing here? Monks, humans, are arguing over the inarguable while the world is burning up in front of your eyes. Wake up. Don't waste time. That's what Norman Fisher says. Wake up. Don't waste time arguing over the mystery of life. So here we are right now. Our world is burning. What are the words of Zen we can offer right now? What on earth is a word of Zen that will mean that the cat doesn't die? How do we not waste time? Should we, like Joshu, who would have saved the hat, should we put our shoes on our heads and walk away without saying anything? Is that the response that's being required of us at the moment? Norman Fisher says we're all cut in two, of course. That's living in this world of discrimination and difference. I am, therefore I'm not you. But we are also cut in one. We don't know it. Being cut in one is I am me, and all is included in that, you and everything else. We practice Zazen to remember that we are cut in one as well as two. If we are Zen monks, we devote ourselves to sitting on our cushions so that we can see this and integrate it into our everyday life. And I would say as students, not monks, we're not monks. But is that what we can do, is sit and realize that deep interconnectedness, that place of emptiness? When Joshu comes back later and puts his sandal on his head, this is what he's saying. Putting a sandal on your head at the time was a sign of mourning. He was saying, I know the cat is dead. Don't fool me with the pantomime. You and I both know the cat is already dead. You and I are already dead. All disputes are already settled. All things are beyond coming and going, vast and wide and at peace. So we can begin to see that maybe at this moment our practice is to remove the barriers that we're caught in this dualistic life. Imagine that, sitting in a place where all disputes are already settled, all things are beyond coming and going, vast and wide and at peace. From where I'm sitting today, I can feel like a pretty hard ask. It can feel so hard to sit through all this fear and distress and anger and confusion in this place where we are, to feel a place where all things are beyond coming and going, vast and wide and at peace. And of course, it would be also really easy to use that as a kind of comforting escapism. Oh, nothing to do with me. This here, everything's vast and wide and at peace. We can jump out into a place of escape or distraction or turning away from what's actually happening. How do we respond from a place of Zen, from a word of Zen? And for me, this is part of how I might find a way to respond. A monk asked Yunmen, what are the teachings of a whole lifetime? And Yunmen said, an appropriate response. An appropriate response. So now we have the possibility, and this response is an alive, embodied reflection of our understanding of emptiness, of dependent co-arising, that everything is happening because of everything that's happening. And in this moment, although I can't pull a single thread because there isn't a single thread, what's my response from aliveness? What's my response from full engagement with the world? The world's burning right now. What's an appropriate response? What's mine? What's yours? What's our word of Zen right now? Norman Fisher goes on to say, there's no denying social realities. We may have a deep connection to the bottom of the ocean, but we live mostly on the surface. We have to deal with the waves of social power and the pain that is caused by conceptions of social power and the individual and collective behavior that comes from these conceptions. Actual choices and material and psychological consequences. We actually have to turn towards those. And maybe we can't afford to or unable to get down to that level where we are all vulnerable, sorry humans. We're all vulnerable, sorry humans in this mess. I was talking with Ed just at the beginning when we were meeting, and we were talking about Sangha and being able to lean into Sangha. And for me, part of taking refuge in Sangha is this, our shared expression of being vulnerable, sorry humans. Joshu's shoe is an expression of grief, an expression of actually being this vulnerable, unsteady human. And he recognizes how we're caught up in division and how little we're able to be fully alive, fully awake to our own predicament. So, as a response, I'm wondering whether I'll go with Leonard Cohen. There's no solution to this mess. The only moment that we can live here comfortably in these absolutely irreconcilable conflicts is this moment when you embrace it all. The only moment that you can live here comfortably in these absolutely irreconcilable conflicts is this moment when you embrace it all and you say, look, I don't understand a fucking thing. Hallelujah. That's the only moment that we can be here fully as human beings. Barry Magid goes on to talk about what's an appropriate response, and he talks about it's not possible not to offer one. You could say every moment, all our character and history and training are just now manifesting as this. We can't miss perfectly expressing the sum of everything that we are in this moment. I'd like to end with another poem called A Brief for the Defense by Jack Gilbert. Sorrow everywhere, slaughter everywhere. If babies are not starving someplace, they're starving somewhere else, with flies in their nostrils. But we enjoy our lives because that's what God wants. Otherwise the mornings before summer dawn would not be made so fine. The Bengal tiger would not be fashioned so miraculously well. The poor women at the fountain are laughing together between the suffering they have known and the awfulness in their future, smiling and laughing while somebody in the village is very sick. There is laughter every day in the terrible streets of Calcutta, and the women laugh in the cages of Bombay. If we deny our happiness, resist our satisfaction, we lessen the importance of their deprivation. We must risk delight. We must risk delight. We can do without pleasure, but not delight, not enjoyment. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world. We must have the stubbornness to accept our gladness in the ruthless furnace of this world, to make injustice the only measure of our attention. To make injustice the only measure of our attention is to praise the devil. If the locomotive of the Lord runs us down, we should give thanks that that end had magnitude. We must admit that there will be music despite everything. We stand at the prow again of a small ship anchored late at night in the tiny port, looking over the sleeping island. The waterfront is 3 shuttered cafes and 1 naked light burning. To hear the faint sound of oars in the silence as a rowboat comes slowly out and then goes back is truly worth all the years of sorrow that are to come. We must admit there will be music despite everything. Our world is the cat. Nansen is asking us right now to say some word of Zen, to live fully committed to our own lives and to take the risk of offering something, anything. That's what I'm offering you today. I'd love to meet anybody else who would love to come up and we can share a word of Zen together, whatever that looks like. Hi, Catherine.
I'm feeling very vulnerable because I don't know I've raised my hand.
Mm.
I just needed to.
And you don't need to know.
And I think I wanted to say that for me, a word of Zen isn't a word. It's just nothing to do with that.
Mm.
It's to do with uh, where ordinary everyday actions come from, in what the root of them is inside us. And that's what makes all the difference. And I think that, you know, whether it's, I'm thinking a lot about my caring role with John,
Yeah.
and it can come from this, it can come from so many places.
And you have a visceral sense of the difference.
Yes.
You know when it's coming from a smaller place and you know when it's coming from a bigger place.
And I feel that when it comes from the bigger place, then it's a word of Zen.
Mm.
Not that there's anything wrong with all the, because as you said, the summation of everything that has ever happened ever and has ever happened to us and conditioning, and so it's not to make the other things wrong,
Yeah.
even if they come from resentful places or whatever, but those different places have a different impact on
Mm.
the person you're with.
And you.
And yes, absolutely. Yeah. Mm.
It is living that Dharma gates are boundless. You know, that you're going to just keep entering them. It's like, and now this one.
And it's very peculiar living in this narrowed world that I seem to be now in. It doesn't have to be small because it's narrow at all. And the vast problems of the world. But for me, the Dharma gates are really small. They're, they're about that. Can I find that place where what I'm offering is coming from Buddha nature or big mind or whatever or the silent mind?
Yeah, or love, just
Yes,
grace,
same
love.
thing, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
I guess I think probably nearly all Dharma gates are pretty small. This moment, this action, this connection.
Yeah. I always think about Ra, and I think it was sometime during COVID, she felt completely overwhelmed and didn't know what she could do. And she felt that what she could do was to put her shoes neatly outside her studio door.
It's the taking care, isn't it? It's that moment, like taking care of our lives, like we're living in the Zendo, taking real care of our lives and the lives around us as much as we can manage.
And I feel that that respect is honouring other people who's suffering. However crazy that's on looked at from one point of view, but I think looked at from a Zen mind, it isn't crazy.
No, to take care, put things in their place.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing to do. Thank you for your practice.
Thank you for your teaching.
Hi,
Hi, Trudy. I'm Emily Van Wyk. I'm in Minneapolis.
mm,
And, I've done inquiry with Flint in person several times, and I don't know that I've actually ever spoken up online before. Um,
mm,
but I was in tears during much of your talk. Your words and your way of sharing just resonates with me very deeply, and I'm grateful for that. I had the privilege of being in Austin at Avamata for the very first time this last weekend, and I'm so moved by that opportunity. Our Sangha here in Minneapolis, Awakening Together, has blossomed from Avamata and Open Door and just this. And I think I just wanted to reflect how much it means to have us gather, and how even simple offerings like real words,
yeah.
just pure connection, how much that means, as well as embodied presence. I was able to meet so many people in person over the weekend.
It's
Or
really good. It's really good when people have got bodies, isn't it?
oh my goodness, it's amazing. It's so yummy. So this whole Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, it's like it comes full circle when I'm in a sustained period of practice in connection with Sangha, in alignment with my own vow, and then like receiving the Dharma. And so I just want to thank you, Trudy, all
And
you
I'm
are.
just loving that sense of the ripple, you're really part of the ripple. It's like, yeah, we all sit, the ripple that's come from Appamada, and all of us here have been touched by that, and it is just such a blessing. It's a
Yeah.
blessing in my life.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Deep bows. I appreciate your words, your practice, your heart. So
Thank you. Mm. Hey,
Yeah, great. Trudy,
lovely.
it's good to see everyone and thank you so much. Your talk was, I don't know, intense and wonderful, and it's one that I'm sure I'm going to revisit. Um, these are hard times, and this is a big help.
Yeah.
I wanted to share something that came to my mind when you mentioned taking the risk to delight. And it brought to mind a quote, and I'm sure many people know Brene Brown. And in one of her books, I think it was Daring Greatly, she wrote about talking to one of her clients who was having a very difficult life. And she said to her, how do you deal with it? Isn't it hard that so many people live such an easy life and you have such struggles. And this quote has stayed with me for years now, which what the woman said was, when you honor what you have, you honor what I've lost. And it's really kind of like a bedrock of a gratitude practice for me. And I think Catherine referred to that too when she was talking about honoring.
Yeah.
And there's just so many times throughout my day when that comes to me, like I really, really do appreciate what I'm able to do because and sometimes it's personal. I think of someone in my own life, and sometimes it's general, but I think it's that, and I think that is the risk of delight.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that so that other people could benefit from that woman's wisdom.
Beautiful to say that, and I think there's a very short Mary Oliver poem about risking delight.
Oh,
It's like don't turn away. There's something about, yeah, if we're in a position, whatever position we're in, I think joy and delight and connection and love
mhm,
are the places that we can stand upright in these storms.
mhm. And I would love to know what it was in that woman's life that gave her that resilience and that insight.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to clone it. But in any
You
case,
look like you're doing a pretty good job with it.
thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Hi, Joel.
Hi, Trudy. Thank you so much for this teaching. It's unsurprising, unsurprisingly deep, unsurprisingly resonant with me, since I always feel the same whenever I hear your voice. But I want to say that uh, I recently gave a talk about another violent koan.
Yes, I listened.
Oh, thank you. And this one is even more distressing because the poor cat, And you have showed me something. What I tried to point to in when I was considering this other koan was the moral imperative that comes out of it. Not to dismiss the other, not to be like the monk in the East Hall fighting with the monk in the West Hall, and that there's this extraordinary thing that, like, how did Nanquan have a sword? What
Yeah.
was he doing? He just grabs a sword and he says, okay, I'm going to kill the cat. And, I feel like, what am I doing that's putting a sword into the hand of other people?
Mm.
And, and how we get tricked by language, the stopper in the story to me is, if you can say a word of Zen, it's like, oh, what would that be? But then, as as Catherine said before, it's not a word. It doesn't have to be a word. Something like that.
I think it's an alive response, and I think that for me, the sword of Manjushri is often fierce. It is cutting through delusion, and we love our delusions. We we do not like to be disillusioned.
Mm-hmm.
We see it as a negative thing rather than liberation or freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Disillusionment is freedom. So for me it's like, yeah, and you're studying, and what would be a response, an alive immediate response, which is why I think just put down the bloody cat. Don't be a nincompoop, put it down.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah,
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank
I'm
you.
so glad you're here. Thank you, Joel. Here you go. Hi, Lynn.
I just wanted to sit with you. and everybody. And one of the things that was coming to me was, because the world feels to be burning, it asks us somehow to burn brighter too. Something. You know, I'm not by nature an activist, but
I'm going to have to smile and stop you because I'm like, really? You think that about yourself?
well, I don't see myself.
Delusions are manifold.
But I'm sitting here.
And I'm saying it in all seriousness. It's like when I think of the, if you're thinking of political activism, I can imagine something of that, but it's like I've seen you make thing after thing after thing. You are so active in our Sangha and you make things happen.
And I just feel it's such a privilege. You know, and with privilege comes responsibility.
Absolutely.
Such a great gift to see you and Catherine and all the very wise people who come up.
Yeah, all this amazing collective wisdom we share. Extraordinary.
Yeah, and all the wise people who are here. Just to say thank you to everybody.
And all the activists.
And all the activists. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're pretty much at time, so let's say the practice principles together. And I think part of my practice has been sending metta to everybody. No baddies, no goodies, just all suffering beings. So we can offer our vow to everybody. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher. Being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Deep and sincere thanks for everyone for your practice, and thanks to Ed for keeping us the whole thing working. And I shall look forward to seeing you next week as well. Thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to take a moment to remind everybody that Appamada's programs and the facilities are supported through your generosity. So your generosity, your support makes a huge difference. And there is a link at the website for contributions. And if you'd like to continue for another half hour, just pop yourself into gallery view, stay right where you are, and we will continue forward. Thank you so much, Trudy. What
Thanks.
an amazing presentation, as always.